Close your eyes now and let your breathing slow. Feel yourself settling deeper into comfort as we begin a gentle journey together. Tonight you will walk through the ancient stones of the Tower of London, where history whispers soft secrets and shadows hold stories older than memory itself. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London, not because of fear, but because the very walls would wrap you in such deep mystery that sleep would find you before the moon reached its peak. This is not a place of terror, but of wonder, a place where time moves like honey, slow and sweet, carrying voices from centuries past. Picture yourself standing before the great gates as twilight settles over the Thames. The river flows beside you, gentle and eternal, carrying the same rhythm it has carried for 1,000 years. You breathe in the evening air, cool and clean, feeling the weight of history settling around your shoulders like a comfortable blanket. The Tower of London waits for you, ancient and patient. Its stones have watched over this bend in the river since William the Conqueror first laid its foundation in 1066. That's nearly 1,000 years of stories, 1,000 years of whispers, 1,000 years of gentle mysteries waiting to unfold in the darkness. You step through the gates, and immediately you feel it. The peculiar quiet that settles over old places when the sun disappears. It's not silence exactly, but something softer. The kind of hush that makes you want to speak in whispers. Not from fear, but from respect for all the dreams that have been dreamed within these walls. Your footsteps echo softly on the cobblestones as you walk deeper into the tower's embrace. The sound is rhythmic, soothing, like a gentle heartbeat that connects you to every person who has walked this same path before you. Lords and ladies, guards and prisoners, kings and commoners. All of them have felt these same stones beneath their feet. All of them have breathed this same air, thick with memory. The White Tower rises before you, pale as moonlight against the darkening sky. This is the heart of it all, the original keep that has stood watch for nearly a millennium. Its walls are thick enough to hold 1,000 secrets, and tonight, as you settle into the peaceful darkness, some of those secrets might choose to share themselves with you. You find yourself drawn to a small chamber in the bloody tower, though you can barely feel. The princes had been sent to the tower not as prisoners, but as royal residents waiting for Edward's coronation. The tower was still a royal palace then, a place where kings prepared for their reign. The boys would have run through these halls, their footsteps quick and light, playing games of chase and hide-and-seek among the ancient stones. On quiet nights like this, visitors say they sometimes hear the sound of children playing. Not frightening sounds, but gentle ones, the soft patter of feet on stone, quiet laughter echoing down corridors, the whispered conversations of brothers, sharing secrets in the dark. These sounds don't startle or alarm. Instead, they comfort, like the memory of your own childhood games, distant and warm. You close your eyes and listen to the peaceful silence. Perhaps tonight you might hear something too. Perhaps the soft rustle of fabric as invisible children move through the moonlight. Perhaps the gentle thud of a ball being bounced against stone walls. Perhaps nothing at all except the soothing rhythm of your own breath, slow and steady, carrying you deeper into rest. The mystery of the princes has never been solved, and perhaps that's as it should be. Some stories are more beautiful when they remain unfinished, when they drift through time like dreams that we can never quite remember upon waking. The boys simply vanished from history one summer, leaving behind only questions and whispers, and the gentle echo of their presence in these ancient rooms. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London because mysteries like this would pull you into such peaceful contemplation that sleep would claim you before you could resist. There's something deeply restful about unsolved puzzles, about stories that end not with answers but with wonder. They settle into your mind like soft music, playing the same gentle melody over and over, until your thoughts grow quiet, and your body grows heavy with approaching dreams. As you sit in the moonlit chamber, you feel the presence of the tower's other gentle spirits. For this is not a place of fear, but of memory. Every stone holds traces of the lives that have touched it. Every shadow carries whispers of conversations held centuries ago. Every breath of air has been breathed before by others who stood in this same spot, looking out at this same moon, feeling this same sense of connection to something larger than themselves. The tower has been many things dreamlike, as if you're floating rather than walking. Time seems to move differently here, stretching and flowing like the Thames outside the walls. In the Wakefield Tower, you pause beside the small oratory where Henry VI was said to have been murdered while at prayer. But tonight there's no violence in this space, only the deep peace that comes from centuries of devotion. The air seems to shimmer with the memory of countless prayers, creating an atmosphere of profound tranquility that makes your eyelids grow heavy. You can almost see the ghostly figure that visitors sometimes report, a gentle presence kneeling in prayer. The figure never moves quickly or dramatically. Instead, it simply kneels in the same spot where Henry once knelt, hands folded, head bowed, lost in meditation that has lasted for more than 500 years. The sight doesn't disturb or frighten. Instead, it fills you with the same sense of peace that comes from watching someone sleep. The tower's most famous ghost is perhaps Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's second wife, who was executed here in 1536. But even her spirit, when it appears, brings no terror to the night. Visitors describe seeing a graceful figure in white, walking slowly along the ramparts or standing quietly in the Tower Green where she met her fate. Her presence is said to be melancholy but peaceful, like the memory of a sad song that somehow brings comfort rather than sorrow. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London because Anne's gentle spirit would lull you into such deep contemplation of life's mysteries that consciousness would slip away like mist over the Thames. There's something profoundly restful about the presence of those who have passed beyond the veil. They carry with them the ultimate peace, the final rest that comes at the end of all earthly struggles. As you continue your slow journey through the tower's chambers, you find yourself in the Beauchamp Tower, where noble prisoners once carved their names and stories into the stone walls. These inscriptions aren't cries of anguish or despair. Instead, they're quiet testimonies to human endurance, to the way hope persists even in the darkest circumstances. You run your fingers gently over the carved words, feeling the texture of the stone, the careful curves of letters cut by hands that trembled not with fear, but with determination to leave something beautiful behind. These carvings are like a way of finding peace in an uncertain world. You trace the outline of his carving with your fingertip, feeling connected across the centuries to this young man who found solace in creativity. His story ended tragically, but the beauty he created remains, a testament to the human capacity to find peace even in the most difficult circumstances. The thought is deeply comforting, like a gentle hand on your shoulder, reminding you that suffering is temporary, but beauty endures. The tower's ravens are perhaps its most famous residents, blackbirds that legend says must never leave if England is to survive. But tonight, they roost quietly in their enclosures, their soft breathing the only sound in the peaceful darkness. Even these mysterious guardians seem touched by the tower's gentle spell, their usual harsh cries replaced by the softest of sighs. According to legend, there have always been ravens at the tower, though the truth is more recent. The birds were first officially appointed as guardians in the 1660s, during the reign of Charles II. The king's astronomer complained that the ravens were interfering with his work at the Royal Observatory, but Charles refused to have them removed after being told that their departure would bring disaster to the kingdom. You find yourself standing near their enclosure, watching the dark shapes roosting peacefully in the shadows. There's something deeply soothing about their presence, these ancient symbols of wisdom and prophecy, now reduced to gentle birds sleeping under the same moon that shines on you. They shift occasionally in their sleep, black feathers ruffling in the night breeze, but their movements are slow and peaceful, adding to the tower's atmosphere of profound rest. The ravens have names, each one carefully chosen and recorded. Munin and Hugin, named for Odin's ravens from Norse mythology. Jubilee and Harris. Poppy and Georgie. These names humanize the birds, making them seem less like mysterious guardians and more like beloved pets who happen to carry the weight of England's destiny on their wings. The thought makes you smile in the darkness. a gentle smile that softens your features and relaxes the muscles around your eyes. As you continue your nocturnal journey, you find yourself in the Crown Jewels chamber, though of course the treasures are locked away behind modern security. But the room itself retains an aura of majesty, creating an atmosphere of deep peace that makes your breathing slow and your heartbeat quiet. The most famous piece in the collection is St. Edward's Crown, used for the coronation of British monarchs since 1661. Made of solid gold and weighing nearly 5 pounds, it would be almost too heavy for most people to wear for more than a few minutes. But the weight is part of its power, a physical reminder of the responsibility that comes with authority. Tonight, you can almost feel that weight yourself, not as a burden, but as a grounding force that connects you to the earth and to the long line of those who have carried such responsibilities before you. You close your eyes and imagine the crown resting on a velvet cushion, its jewels catching moonlight that filters through the chamber's narrow windows. The emeralds would glow with a deep green fire, the sapphires would shine like captured pieces of sky, and the diamonds would scatter light like tiny stars. But even in your imagination, these treasures bring no excitement or desire. Instead, they inspire a kind of reverent sleepiness, the same feeling you might have while gazing at stars on a clear night, overwhelmed by beauty too vast to fully comprehend. The tower's chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula holds perhaps the most poignant stories of all. This small church within the tower's walls has been the final resting place for many of those who died here, from common criminals to queens and nobles. But tonight, the chapel feels not like a place of death but of eternal rest, of peace that surpasses understanding. You enter the chapel quietly, your footsteps muffled on the ancient stones. Moonlight streams through the stained glass windows, casting coloured patterns on the floor in blues and reds and golden yellows. The effect is like being inside a kaleidoscope, surrounded by gentle beauty that shifts and changes as clouds pass across the moon outside. Anne Boleyn rests here, beneath the altar, along with Catherine Howard, Henry VIII's fifth wife who met the same fate just 5 years later. Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, lies nearby, executed at just 16 years old for accepting a crown she never wanted. Their stories are tragic, but there's something peaceful about knowing they rest together in this quiet place, their earthly struggles finally ended. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London because the profound peace of this chapel on the mystery of existence. Your knees rest comfortably on the ancient stones, worn smooth by centuries of other knees, other prayers, other moments of quiet surrender to something larger than individual will. As you kneel there in the peaceful darkness, you become aware of the tower's most subtle mystery of all. It's not the famous ghosts or dramatic legends, but something much quieter. It's the way the building itself seems to breathe, the way the stones expand and contract with the changing temperature, creating tiny sounds like gentle sighs. It's the way shadows move and shift as clouds pass overhead, creating the illusion of movement in empty corridors. It's the way your own heartbeat seems to synchronize with some deeper rhythm, some pulse that has been beating in this place for 1,000 years. This is why you wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London, not because of fear or supernatural terror, but because the building's deep peace would pull you into a state of such profound relaxation that consciousness would slip away like water through your fingers. The tower doesn't frighten visitors into sleeplessness. Instead, it lulls them into the deepest, most restful sleep they've ever experienced. You rise from your knees slowly, feeling the pleasant stiffness that comes from sitting still for a long time. Your movements are unhurried, dreamlike, as if you're already half asleep. You leave the chapel and continue your gentle exploration, drawn by an invisible current toward the tower's outer walls. The ramparts offer a view of the Thames, dark and glittering under the moon. The river moves slowly here, in no hurry to reach the sea. Barges and pleasure boats are moored along the banks, bobbing gently in the current like sleeping birds. The modern city spreads out beyond the water, its lights twinkling like earthbound stars, but somehow the view doesn't intrude on the tower's ancient atmosphere. Instead, it creates a sense of continuity, of life flowing on as it always has, generation after generation, finding their way toward rest. You lean against the stone wall, feeling its coolness against your palms. The Thames whispers below, a gentle sound like distant conversation, like the murmur of voices in another room that lulls you towards sleep. You could step displays of skill and courage that celebrated the highest ideals of medieval society. Knights would ride against each other with blunted weapons, more dance than battle, more ceremony than violence. The crowds would cheer for their favourites, ladies would bestow tokens of favour, and minstrels would sing songs of valour and romance. It was theatre as much as sport, a way of transforming the harsh realities of medieval warfare into something beautiful and ennobling. Tonight, you can almost see the ghostly figures of long-dead knights preparing for combat that will never come. They move slowly, deliberately, checking their equipment with the careful attention of craftsmen rather than warriors. Their horses stamp and snort softly, but the sounds are muffled, dreamlike, as if heard through water or thick curtains. Even the spectral crowds seem subdued, their cheering reduced to gentle whispers of encouragement and praise. You settle onto one of the stone benches that line the ward, feeling the coolness of the rock through your clothes. The bench is worn smooth by centuries of other watchers, other dreamers who sat in this same spot waiting for sleep to find them. You close your eyes and let the gentle sounds of the Phantom Tournament wash over you, a lullaby of chivalry and honour that carries you deeper into the tower's peaceful embrace. The White Tower looms above you, its pale walls seeming to glow with their own inner light. This is the oldest part of the complex, built by William the Conqueror's craftsmen using stone shipped from Normandy. The builders were artists as much as engineers, creating not just a fortress, but a symbol, the statement of power that would endure for centuries. Every stone was placed with care, every measurement calculated to create not just strength, but beauty. You can almost see those ancient workers, labouring by torchlight to raise walls that would outlast empires. They move slowly in your imagination, with the deliberate care of people who know their work will be judged by generations yet unborn. The sound of their chisels on stone creates a gentle rhythm, like rain on a roof or waves against a shore, natural sounds that speak to something deep in human memory. The tower's construction took more than 20 years, spanning the reigns of 2 kings. Generations of workers devoted their lives to its creation. Fathers passing their skills to sons, craftsmen training apprentices who would train apprentices of their own. It became more than a building project, family that spans centuries. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London because this sense of belonging, of being part of something larger than yourself, would fill you with such profound peace that sleep would seem not like unconsciousness, but like coming home. The tower doesn't just house the dead and the dreaming. It welcomes the living into its ancient rhythm, its eternal cycle of day and night, memory and forgetting, story and silence. As the night deepens, you find yourself drawn to the Salt Tower, where many prisoners once carved their final thoughts into the unyielding stone. But these inscriptions aren't desperate scratches of fear and anger. Instead, they're careful, deliberate works of art, created by people who found beauty even in captivity, hope even in despair. The most famous of these carvings was made by Hugh Draper, imprisoned here in 1561 for his Protestant faith. Rather than raging against his fate, he spent his time creating an intricate astronomical clock on his cell wall, complete with zodiac signs and celestial calculations. The work took months to complete, each day bringing new details, new refinements, new proof of his unbroken spirit. You trace the outline of his carving with your fingertip, feeling the smooth grooves cut into stone that seemed impossibly hard to human hands. The stars and planets he carved still wheel overhead, following the same paths they followed when he marked their positions 5 centuries ago. His captivity ended with execution, but his art endures, a testament to the human capacity to find meaning and beauty even in the darkest circumstances. The carving fills you with a deep sense of peace, the same feeling you might have while watching clouds drift across the sky, or waves roll onto a distant shore. There's something profoundly restful about contemplating the eternal, about connecting yourself to patterns larger than individual life and death. Hugh Draper found that peace in his calculations and carvings, and tonight, his work shares that peace with you. Other prisoners left their own marks on the tower's stones, initials and dates, family coats of arms, religious symbols, fragments of poetry and prayer. Each inscription represents a moment when someone refused to be erased by history, when they claimed their right to be remembered, even if only by future prisoners who would share their cells. Reading these carved messages is like listening to a very rhythm, and your breathing becomes shallow and regular, the breathing of someone drifting towards sleep. The Tower of London is full of such peaceful corners, small spaces where the weight of history creates not oppression but comfort. Each room has its own personality, its own collection of stories and spirits, its own way of welcoming visitors into its timeless embrace. You could spend eternity exploring these chambers, discovering new mysteries, new reasons to wonder and dream. But tonight, as the moon reaches its zenith and begins its slow descent toward dawn, you feel the gentle pull of approaching sleep. Your eyelids grow heavy, your thoughts become soft and unfocused, and the tower's many voices blend into a single, soothing lullaby that carries you toward rest. In the Lanthorn Tower, medieval kings once kept their private treasures, not just gold and jewels, but books and maps, scientific instruments and works of art. The tower was a sanctuary of learning, a place where knowledge was preserved and protected against the chaos of an uncertain world. Tonight, you can almost smell the ghost of ancient parchment, the phantom scent of candle wax and ink that once filled these chambers. You imagine the kings of old sitting here late at night, reading by candlelight, studying maps of distant lands, contemplating the mysteries of astronomy and mathematics. They would have felt the same sense of peaceful solitude that fills you now, the same connection to something larger than immediate concerns. Knowledge has its own magic, its own way of creating sanctuary in a troubled world. The books are long gone, scattered to other libraries or crumbled to dust, but their spirit remains. You can feel it in the very air, a sense of curiosity and wonder that makes you want to learn and explore and understand. But even this intellectual excitement is gentle, subdued, filtered through centuries of patient contemplation into something that calms rather than stimulates. You settle into the window seat where countless others have sat before you, looking out at the Thames as it reflects the moon's gentle light. The view hasn't changed much in 500 years. The river still flows at the same pace, still carries the same dreams and hopes toward the distant sea. Watching it, you feel yourself becoming part of that flow, part of the eternal current that connects all times and all places. Gifts or captured in distant lands. Lions and tigers, bears and eagles, elephants and zebras, all lived within these walls alongside the human residents. The arrangement sounds strange to modern sensibilities, but in medieval times it represented the height of civilization, proof that English kings could tame and protect the wildest creatures on earth. You can almost hear the ghostly sounds of this vanished zoo, the soft padding of great cats in their enclosures, the gentle rumble of a contented bear, the rustle of wings as exotic birds settle for the night. These sounds don't disturb the tower's peace. Instead, they add richness and depth to its atmosphere, like additional instruments joining an orchestra. The animals were cared for by keepers who devoted their lives to understanding these foreign creatures, learning their needs and habits, finding ways to keep them healthy and content in an alien environment. It was pioneering work, the beginning of modern zoology, but it was also an act of love, a recognition that all living things deserve dignity and care. Tonight, you feel surrounded by this legacy of compassion, this tradition of providing sanctuary for the lost and displaced. The tower has always been a place of refuge, even when it served as a prison. Its walls have sheltered kings and commoners, humans and animals, the living and the dead. All are welcome here. All find peace within its ancient embrace. As you continue your gentle exploration, you find yourself in the Bywood Tower, the main entrance to the tower complex. This is where visitors first encounter the building's mysterious power, where the modern world gives way to something older and more profound. The transition is gentle but unmistakable, like stepping from bright sunlight into cool shadow, from noise into silence, from hurry into patience. The Bywood Tower's portcullis still hangs above the entrance, its iron teeth suspended like a frozen waterfall. In medieval times, this gate could be dropped in an instant, sealing the tower against any threat. But tonight, it seems less like a weapon than like a guardian, a protective presence, watching over all who pass beneath its shadow. You pass through the gate slowly, feeling the weight of centuries settling on your shoulders like a comfortable cloak. Each step takes you deeper into the tower's embrace, further from the modern world, and closer to something timeless and eternal. Your footsteps echo softly on the ancient. You can almost see the ghostly outline of that vanished moat, moonlight glimmering on phantom water that laps gently against walls that no longer need protection. The sound would have been soothing, like a giant fountain creating white noise that masked the sounds of the city beyond. Even in its defensive purpose, the moat would have brought peace to those within its protection. You follow the moat's former path around the tower's perimeter, your feet finding the gentle depression where water once flowed. The walk becomes a meditation, a slow circuit that gradually separates you from the concerns of the modern world. Each step brings deeper peace, deeper connection to the tower's ancient rhythms. The outer wall of the tower still bears the scars of various sieges and attacks, but tonight these marks seem less like evidence of violence than like wrinkles on an old face. Signs of experience and endurance rather than damage. The tower has survived everything history could throw at it, outlasting enemies and friends alike, standing firm while empires rose and fell around it. This permanence is deeply comforting, a reminder that some things endure beyond the span of individual lives. The tower has witnessed the rise and fall of dynasties, the birth and death of nations, the endless cycle of human ambition and failure. Through it all, it has remained constant, a fixed point in a changing world, a place where the eternal can be glimpsed through the temporal. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London because this sense of permanence, of connection to something that transcends mortal concerns, would fill you with such profound peace that consciousness would slip away like morning mist before the sun. The tower doesn't just house ghosts and legends, it houses the very concept of endurance, the idea that beauty and strength can survive any challenge time can offer. As you complete your circuit of the outer wall, you find yourself back at the main entrance, but somehow everything looks different now. The moonlight seems brighter, the shadows deeper, the very air thicker with mystery and possibility. You have been initiated into the tower's secrets, welcomed into its community of dreamers and wanderers, given a glimpse of truths that can't be captured in books or documentaries. The Cradle Tower, smallest of the tower's many structures, stands at the edge of the complex like a gentle sentinel watching over the Thames. Its name comes from its original purpose as above the concerns of the ordinary world, into a realm where mystery and meaning intertwine. From the tower's window, you can see the length of the Thames as it curves through London, carrying its burden of history toward the sea. Ships and boats dot the water, their lights reflecting like fallen stars on the dark surface. The sight fills you with the same peaceful melancholy that comes from watching a sunset or listening to distant music, beautiful but somehow unreachable. The river has carried so many stories, so many lives toward their destinations. Vikings and Romans, merchants and missionaries, all have travelled these same waters toward whatever fate awaited them in this ancient city. Tonight, you feel connected to all of them, part of the endless stream of humanity that has found its way to this bend in the river, this crossing point between past and future. You settle into the window seat, letting the peaceful rhythm of the river lull you toward sleep. The water moves slowly here, in no hurry to reach its destination, content to flow at its own pace through the heart of history. Your breathing slows to match its rhythm, and your thoughts begin to drift like boats on the current, carrying you toward dreams you can't yet imagine. The tower's bell tower holds particular significance for those seeking peace. This is where the curfew bell once rang each evening, signalling the end of the day's activities and the beginning of night's rest. The bell is silent now, but its spiritual presence remains, calling modern visitors to the same peaceful surrender that medieval residents once embraced. You climb the winding stairs to the bell tower's upper chamber, feeling the building's ancient rhythm in your bones. Each step seems to echo with the ghost of bells that once rang here. Not harsh alarms, but gentle reminders of time's passage. Soft calls to prayer and contemplation and rest. The chamber where the bell once hung is empty now, but the space itself seems to vibrate with accumulated sound. Centuries of bronze voices calling across the Thames, marking the hours and days and years of London's long history. You stand in the centre of the chamber and listen to the silence, hearing in it all the bells that have ever rung, all the calls to worship and warning, all the celebrations and lamentations that have echoed from this ancient tower. The view from the bell tower encompasses the entire tower complex, spread out below like a medieval city in miniature. From this height, you can see how the various towers and walls fit together, how the builders created not just a fortress, but a community, a complex space but spiritual territory, marking this place as different from the ordinary world beyond. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London because this sense of completeness, of being part of a perfect whole, would fill you with such contentment that sleep would come not as escape, but as fulfillment. The tower doesn't just contain its residents, it completes them, making them part of something larger and more meaningful than individual existence. As the night reaches its deepest point, you find yourself drawn back to the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, that small sanctuary where so many of the tower's residents have found their final rest. The chapel seems different now, not just a building but a presence, a gentle spirit that welcomes all who seek peace within its walls. You enter quietly, removing your shoes so that your bare feet can feel the ancient stones, connect directly with the foundation on which centuries of prayer and meditation have been built. The floor is cool and smooth, worn by countless knees and feet into a surface that seems almost alive, pulsing gently with accumulated faith and hope. The altar draws you forward, not with any religious compulsion, but with the simple attraction of a place where human beings have consistently turned their faces toward mystery, toward meaning, toward something beyond the immediate demands of survival. Whether Christian or not, whether believer or skeptic, you find yourself moved by the sincerity of all those who have knelt here before you. You settle into one of the ancient pews, feeling the wood's smooth surface against your back. The bench has supported countless worshippers, countless mourners, countless souls seeking comfort in times of trial. Tonight, it supports you, holding your weight as gently as it has held the weight of kings and commoners, saints and sinners, all united in their need for something greater than themselves. The chapel's stained glass windows cast coloured patterns on the floor, blues and reds and golds that shift and change as clouds pass across the moon. The effect is hypnotic, soothing, like watching flames dance in a fireplace or waves roll onto a distant shore. Your eyes follow the patterns as they move, and gradually your thoughts begin to move with them, flowing and shifting like the light itself. This is where many of the tower's most famous residents have found their peace. Anne Boleyn rests beneath the altar, her tumultuous life finally ended, who watch over visitors and residents alike. You close your eyes and feel their gentle presence, not as ghosts, but as guardians, protective spirits who understand the weight of earthly concerns because they once carried such burdens themselves. Their presence is comforting rather than frightening, like the feeling of being watched over by loving grandparents who have seen everything life can offer and learned to find peace in acceptance. The chapel grows quieter as the night deepens, but it's not the silence of emptiness. Instead, it's the rich silence of a place where much has been said and felt and experienced, where words are no longer necessary, because understanding has moved beyond language into something deeper and more primal. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London, because this sanctuary would draw you into such profound communion with the eternal that the boundary between sleeping and waking would dissolve, leaving you floating in a space where time has no meaning and peace has no opposite. As dawn approaches, though you cannot see the sun through the chapel's ancient walls, you feel the subtle shift in the tower's atmosphere. Night is the tower's natural element, the time when its mysteries are most accessible, when the boundary between past and present grows thin enough to step across. But dawn brings its own gifts, its own gentle magic. You rise from the pew slowly, your body stiff from sitting in contemplation, but your spirit refreshed by the chapel's peaceful influence. The coloured light from the windows has shifted, taking on the warmer tones that signal approaching day. Soon, the tower will fill with visitors, guides and tourists exploring its public mysteries. But for now, in these last precious moments of night, it belongs to you and to the gentle spirits who call it home. You walk slowly toward the chapel door, pausing to look back at the altar where so many stories have ended and perhaps begun again. The space seems to shimmer with possibility, with the promise that every ending is also a beginning, every loss also a transformation. The thought fills you with deep contentment, the satisfaction that comes from glimpsing truth too large for ordinary understanding. Outside the chapel, the tower's courtyards are beginning to catch the first hints of dawn light, though the sun is still hidden behind London's eastern horizons. The ancient stones seem to glow, stir in their enclosures, ruffling their feathers and stretching their wings as they prepare for another day of their eternal vigil. They seem to nod at you as you pass, acknowledging your membership in the community of night watchers, those who have kept faith with the tower's deeper mysteries. You find yourself back at the main gate where your journey began hours ago, but you are not the same person who entered here at sunset. The tower has changed you, as it changes everyone who spends a full night within its walls. You have been marked by mystery, touched by eternity, initiated into truths that cannot be spoken but only experienced. The Thames flows beside you, carrying the same rhythm it carried when you first arrived. But now you understand that rhythm differently. It's not just water moving toward the sea. It's time itself flowing past this ancient stronghold, bringing new stories while carrying away old ones, connecting past and future in an endless stream of possibility. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London, not because it would frighten you into sleeplessness, but because it would fill you with such deep peace that consciousness would become unnecessary. The tower doesn't haunt its visitors with terror. Instead, it blesses them with the gift of perfect rest, the kind of sleep that heals not just the body but the soul. As you prepare to leave, you turn back for one last look at the white tower, standing pale and eternal against the lightening sky. It seems to nod farewell, promising that you will always be welcome here, that you have earned your place among those who understand its deeper mysteries. The Tower of London stands as it has stood for nearly 1,000 years, patient and permanent, guardian of secrets and keeper of dreams. It watches over the Thames and the city beyond, holding space for mystery in a world that often forgets the value of wonder. Tonight it has shared some of its secrets with you, welcomed you into its community of dreamers and seekers. You step through the main gate and back into the modern world, but you carry the tower's peace with you. In quiet moments you will remember the feeling of those ancient stones beneath your feet, the sound of phantom footsteps echoing through moonlit corridors, the sense of being part of something larger and more enduring than individual life. The tower's greatest mystery is not any particular ghost or legend, but its capacity to transform those who spend time within its walls. It offers a kind of peace that the modern world has forgotten, a connection to eternal rhythm, knowing that part of you will always remain within its walls, part of the eternal community of souls who have found sanctuary in its shadows, rest in its mysteries, and peace in its timeless embrace. The Tower of London waits patiently for the next visitor who will need its particular kind of healing, the next soul seeking connection to something larger than themselves. It has endless time and infinite patience, standing guard over the eternal mysteries that make life worth living, offering its ancient gifts to anyone willing to spend a night in communion with wonder. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London, but you wouldn't need to. The tower would ensure that you found everything you came seeking and more besides, sending you back into the world refreshed and renewed, carrying its blessing forward into whatever adventures await. And in your dreams, always in your dreams, you will return to walk those moonlit corridors again, to sit in that peaceful chapel, to feel the Thames flowing beside you like time itself, carrying you gently toward the perfect rest that waits at the end of all journeys. The tower's final gift is the knowledge that such peace exists, that there are places in this world where the eternal touches the temporal, where mystery and meaning intertwine to create something beautiful beyond all understanding. You have been to such a place, walked its ancient halls, breathed its timeless air. The memory will sustain you through whatever challenges lie ahead, a permanent source of strength and comfort that no earthly power can touch. Sleep well, dreamer. The Tower of London watches over your rest, guardian of all who seek peace in its ancient embrace. Tomorrow will bring new adventures, new mysteries to explore, new opportunities to touch the eternal through the temporal. But tonight, rest in the knowledge that you have been blessed by one of the world's most mysterious and beautiful places, marked by magic that will never fade. The tower stands eternal, patient as stone, gentle as moonlight, offering its gifts to any who approach with open hearts and quiet spirits. You have received those gifts, carried them safely through your night of wonder, and now they are yours forever. Sleep, and dream of ancient corridors bathed in silver light, of gentle spirits who watch over the living, of peace that passes understanding, and rest that heals all wounds. The Tower of London keeps its vigil, as it has for nearly 1,000 years, as it will for 1,000. Its shadows. The tower is not finished with you yet, and perhaps you are not finished with it either. You turn away from the gate and walk back into the heart of the complex, your footsteps echoing softly on stones that have witnessed 1,000 years of such returns. The tower calls to certain souls, marking them as its own, inviting them to explore deeper mysteries that reveal themselves only to those who truly listen. The Devil Tower stands apart from the others, smaller and more intimate, like a secret whispered in stone. Few visitors find their way here, but tonight it beckons to you with the promise of stories untold, mysteries unexplored. You climb its narrow stairs slowly, each step taking you further from the ordinary world and deeper into the tower's embrace. From the Devil Tower's small chamber you can see the entire complex spread out like a medieval village, each building connected to the others by invisible threads of story and memory. The moonlight transforms the scene into something from a fairy tale, all silver and shadow, beauty and mystery intertwined until you cannot tell where one ends and the other begins. You settle into the tower's single window seat, feeling the cool stone against your back. This perch has been occupied by countless others over the centuries, guards keeping watch, prisoners gazing at freedom beyond the walls, scholars studying the movement of stars across the London sky. Tonight, it holds you, another temporary guardian in the tower's long succession of watchers. The view from here encompasses not just the tower but the river beyond, where barges move slowly through the darkness like dreams made manifest. Each boat carries its own cargo of stories, its own burden of hopes and fears, its own destination in the vast network of waterways that connects London to the world beyond. Watching them, you feel yourself becoming part of that network, part of the eternal flow of life and story and dream. You close your eyes and listen to the gentle sounds of the night, the soft lapping of water against stone, the distant whisper of wind through ancient timbers, the almost inaudible settling of walls that have stood for centuries. These sounds blend into a symphony of peace, a lullaby composed by time itself and played for any soul willing to listen. The tower's horses once lived in stables that have long since been otherwise seemed like a place frozen in time. The tower has always been alive, always been home to creatures both human and animal, all finding their own forms of sanctuary within its walls. In your imagination, you see the ghostly horses being led to water, their coats gleaming in moonlight that filters through windows high above. Their handlers move with the slow deliberation of people who understand that true horsemanship is not about dominance, but about partnership, not about force, but about gentleness and trust. These spectral grooms brush their charges with phantom brushes, speaking to them in the soft tones that horses have always understood, regardless of language or century. The care they show is timeless, connecting you to the endless chain of humans who have found peace in the company of animals, who have discovered that some of life's deepest satisfactions come from serving creatures more innocent than ourselves. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London because these gentle scenes would fill your heart with such contentment that sleep would come not as escape, but as natural conclusion to a day spent in perfect harmony with the world. The tower shows you that peace is possible, that even in places marked by conflict and struggle, gentleness can take root and flourish. The well tower holds water that has been flowing for centuries, drawn from sources deep beneath London's busy streets. This water has sustained generations of tower residents, from kings to prisoners, from guards to scholars. It connects the tower to the very foundation of the earth, to aquifers and underground rivers that predate human civilization. You make your way to the well tower's depths, descending stone steps worn smooth by countless feet. The air grows cooler as you go deeper, carrying the clean scent of water and stone that speaks of purity and renewal. Your descent feels like a pilgrimage, a journey towards something essential and life-giving. The well itself is a marvel of medieval engineering, its circular walls perfectly fitted stones that have held back the earth for hundreds of years. Water gleams in its depths, reflecting the light of your imaginary torch like a mirror made of liquid silver. The sight fills you with the same reverence you might feel when gazing at a natural spring in an ancient forest. This water has touched the lips of Anne Boleyn and Thomas More, has washed the hands of kings and the wounds of common soldiers. It has been blessed by priests and cursed by prisoners, has carried prayers and tears in equal measure toward whatever destinations from this same source. Part of an unbroken chain of thirst and satisfaction that stretches back through centuries. The act of drinking from the tower's well is like taking communion with time itself. You become part of its story, adding your own small chapter to the endless book of human need and renewal. The water flows through you as it has flowed through countless others, carrying with it the accumulated blessings of all who have found refreshment here. Returning to the surface, you feel renewed not just in body but in spirit. The tower's water has worked its ancient magic, washing away the accumulated dust of ordinary concerns and leaving you clean and refreshed, ready for whatever mysteries the night might yet reveal. The Martin Tower once housed the crown jewels, those symbols of earthly power that draw millions of visitors to gaze upon their beauty. But the tower's real treasure was never gold or precious stones. Its true wealth lay in the reverence it inspired, the sense of the sacred that transforms mere objects into windows into the divine. You climb to the Martin Tower's upper chamber, where the jewels once rested in cases lined with velvet. The room is empty now, but it still vibrates with the accumulated awe of countless visitors who came here seeking not just beauty but meaning, not just spectacle but transcendence. Standing in this empty chamber, you realize that the jewels themselves were never the point. They were simply focal points for human longing, crystallized forms of our deepest desires for beauty and permanence and connection to something greater than ourselves. The real treasure was always the reverence they inspired, the way they lifted ordinary thoughts toward extraordinary possibilities. You can almost see the ghostly forms of the missing treasures, the phantom crowns and scepters that once caught light and threw it back, transformed into something magical. They shimmer in your imagination like mirages, beautiful but ultimately intangible, reminding you that the most precious things in life cannot be touched or owned, but only experienced and shared. The St. Edward's crown, used for coronations since 1661, would have rested here on its cushion of purple velvet, waiting for the next moment when it would transform an ordinary person into a symbol of divine authority. The weight of that transformation hangs in the air still. The awesome responsibility of representing something larger than individual will or desire. You close your eyes and imagine the crown connect us to our highest aspirations, our deepest values, our most sacred commitments to each other and to the future. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London because contemplating such mysteries would fill you with such profound understanding of your place in the larger story of humanity that consciousness would seem like a small thing compared to the vast symphony of connection and purpose that surrounds us all. The tower's kitchens once fed hundreds of residents, from royal families to common soldiers, all sustained by the same fires that burned in massive hearths now cold and silent. But the spirit of nourishment remains, the sense of care and provision that transforms simple food into expressions of love and community. You make your way to the kitchen areas, now converted to other uses but still carrying the warmth of countless meals prepared with care and served with hope. The very stones seem to remember the heat of cooking fires, the bustle of preparation, the satisfaction that comes from feeding others. Here, master cooks once worked alongside scullery maids, all united in the essential task of sustaining life. The hierarchy of the kitchen was based not on birth or wealth, but on skill and dedication, on the ability to transform raw ingredients into nourishment that pleased both body and soul. You can almost smell the phantom aromas of feasts long past, the rich scents of roasted meats and fresh bread, of herbs and spices brought from distant lands to please royal palates. But beneath these exotic fragrances lies something simpler and more profound: the basic satisfaction that comes from honest work honestly done. The tower's kitchens fed everyone equally, from kings to prisoners, adjusting the quality and quantity of food to match station and circumstance, but never forgetting that all humans share the same basic needs. In this way, the kitchen became a place of equality, where the fundamental humanity of all residents was acknowledged and honoured. You settle into a corner where kitchen workers once rested between the frantic preparations for great feasts. The space feels warm despite the absence of fires, heated by the accumulated goodwill of all who laboured here to nourish others. This warmth seeps into your bones, relaxing muscles you didn't know were tense, calming thoughts you didn't realise were agitated. The rhythm of kitchen work was like a dance, each worker knowing their role, all moving together toward the common goal of the completed meal. This rhythm persists in the silent chambers, a ghostly choreography that you can feel in the very air. The you, filling you with the same sense of purpose and connection that once drove its busy workers. The Flint Tower stands at the Thames's edge, weathered by centuries of river spray and London fog. Its stones are darker than the others, stained by time and weather into shades of grey and green that seem to shift and change as clouds pass overhead. This tower has always been the tower's connection to the water, its window onto the flowing world beyond its walls. You climb to the Flint Tower's topmost chamber, feeling the building sway slightly in the night breeze. This movement doesn't alarm you but comforts you, proof that even the mightiest structures remain connected to the natural world, responsive to forces larger than human engineering. From this height, you can see the Thames in all its glory, a silver ribbon carrying the dreams and hopes of millions toward the distant sea. Ships pass below like moving constellations, their lights reflecting on the water in patterns that shift and dance with each small wave. The sight fills you with the same wonder you might feel when watching shooting stars across a clear night sky. The river has been London's highway for thousands of years, carrying Vikings and Romans, merchants and missionaries, all toward whatever destiny awaited them in this ancient city. Tonight, it carries you as well, not physically but spiritually, making you part of its eternal flow toward unknown destinations. You lean against the tower's window frame, feeling the cool night air on your face. The breeze carries scents of water and wildflowers, of rain and growing things, of all the countryside through which the Thames has passed on its journey to this moment. Breathing these scents, you feel your lungs filling not just with air, but with connection to everything the river has touched. The Thames never stops moving, never pauses in its ancient journey toward the sea. This constancy is deeply comforting, a reminder that some things endure beyond human understanding, that the world contains forces larger and more reliable than any individual will or ambition. The river flows whether we watch it or not, whether we need it or not, simply because flowing is its nature. You close your eyes and listen to the gentle sound of water moving past the tower's foundations. The sound is hypnotic, rhythmic, like a giant heartbeat that has been pumping for millions of years. Your own heartbeat, Tower of London, because the river's eternal song would lull you into such deep harmony with the natural world that individual consciousness would seem like a small eddy in an infinite stream. The Thames teaches the ultimate lesson in surrender, showing how true peace comes not from fighting the current, but from becoming part of the flow. The Bowyer Tower holds memories of the skilled craftsmen who once made longbows within its walls, those elegant weapons that gave English archers their legendary accuracy. But tonight, the tower's atmosphere speaks not of war, but of craftsmanship, of the deep satisfaction that comes from creating something beautiful and functional with your own hands. You enter the workshop spaces where bowyers once shaped yew wood into instruments of precision and power. The rooms are empty now, but they still resonate with the rhythm of careful work, the patient process of transforming raw materials into objects of grace and purpose. The making of a longbow was an art that required years to master, a delicate balance of strength and flexibility that could not be rushed or forced. Each piece of wood had its own personality, its own grain and growth patterns that the craftsman had to understand and work with rather than against. You can almost see the ghostly figures of long-dead bowyers, working by candlelight to shape wood that would serve archers for decades. Their hands move with the confidence that comes from deep knowledge, each cut and curve guided by understanding earned through years of patient practice. The tools of their trade were simple, but perfectly suited to their purpose, hand-forged by blacksmiths who understood that a craftsman's instruments must be extensions of their own body and will. Draw knives and spokeshaves, scrapers and sanders, each tool worn smooth by countless hours of use, shaped by the very work they were designed to perform. This symbiosis between craftsman and tool, between human intention and natural material, created objects that transcended their utilitarian purpose to become works of art. A well-made longbow was a thing of beauty, its curves as graceful as any sculpture, its balance as perfect as any musical instrument. You run your hands along the wooden workbenches where these masterpieces took shape, feeling the smoothness worn into the wood by generations of craftsmen. The surface is warm to your touch, as if it still retains heat from the friction of all the work performed here, all the dreams and hopes shaped into physical form. The rhythm of the bowyer's work was meditative, whatever time was needed to create something worthy of their skills and their materials. They worked not for efficiency, but for excellence, not for speed, but for perfection. You settle into a corner of the workshop, surrounded by the gentle spirits of these master craftsmen. Their presence is calming, filled with the peace that comes from work well done, from skills passed down through generations, from the satisfaction of creating beauty in a difficult world. The tower's gardens once bloomed with herbs and flowers, vegetables and fruit trees, all tended by gardeners who understood that beauty and utility could flourish side by side. These green spaces provided not just food and medicine, but also peace, places where residents could find refuge from the stone and steel of fortress life. You walk through the areas where these gardens once grew, now paved with modern materials, but still carrying the memory of growing things. The very air seems lighter here, touched by the phantom fragrance of roses and lavender, mint and rosemary, all the plants that once brought colour and scent to this ancient place. Medieval gardens were designed as much for the soul as for the body, following patterns that reflected the harmony between human needs and natural beauty. Herb gardens were laid out in intricate patterns that pleased the eye, while providing easy access to the plants needed for cooking and healing. You can almost see the ghostly figures of tower gardeners, moving slowly between the beds with the patient rhythm of those who understand that good things take time to grow. Their work was a form of prayer, a daily communion with the forces of life and growth that sustain all existence. The roses that once climbed the tower's walls were not just decorative but symbolic, representing the eternal human hope that beauty can flourish even in the most unlikely places. Their thorns reminded viewers that protection and beauty often go hand in hand, that the most precious things in life require both strength and delicacy. Herb gardens provided medicine as well as flavour, filled with plants that could ease pain, promote healing, and restore balance to bodies stressed by the demands of medieval life. The gardeners who tended these plants were part healer, part botanist, part artist, combining scientific knowledge with intuitive understanding of the natural world. You kneel in a spot where herb gardens once flourished, placing your palm to govern all life on earth. In your imagination you see the tower's gardens in full bloom, a riot of colour and fragrance that softens the fortress's stern facade. Bees hum among the flowers, birds nest in fruit trees, and gentle breezes carry the scent of growing things to every corner of the complex. This vision fills you with deep contentment, the satisfaction that comes from imagining a world where human needs and natural beauty exist in perfect harmony. The tower's gardens represent hope made manifest, proof that even in places touched by conflict, life finds a way to flourish. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London because these phantom gardens would fill your senses with such peace that sleep would come like a gentle rain on thirsty earth. natural and necessary, and deeply restoring. The memory of growing things would carry you into dreams where all conflicts are resolved, all hungers satisfied, all hopes fulfilled. The wardrobe tower once housed the royal clothing, those elaborate garments that transformed ordinary people into living symbols of authority and grace. But the tower's real treasure was not the clothing itself, but the skill of the seamstresses and tailors who created these wearable works of art. You climb to the tower's upper chambers, where master craftsmen once worked by candlelight to create garments fit for kings and queens. The room still seemed to shimmer with the ghost of silk and velvet. The phantom gleam of gold thread and precious stones worked into patterns of incredible beauty and complexity. The creation of royal garments was an art form that required not just skill but vision, the ability to imagine how fabric and thread could be transformed into expressions of power and beauty. Each garment told a story, conveying messages about the wearer's status, allegiances, and aspirations. You can almost see the spectral figures of seamstresses bent over their work, their needles flashing in the candlelight as they guide silk and gold into patterns that will outlast the lives of those who wear them. Their work required not just technical precision, but artistic sensitivity, the ability to balance color and texture, proportion and detail. The tools of their trade were simple but perfectly crafted. Needles so fine they could barely be seen, scissors that cut through silk like whispers, thimbles worn smooth by years of careful work. Each tool was an extension of the craftsman's skill, shaped by use into instruments of remarkable precision and grace. Touch, as if it still retains the heat of all the creativity and dedication that was poured into the garments shaped here. The rhythm of needlework was meditative, repetitive motions that quieted the mind, while the hands created beauty. Each stitch was both functional necessity and artistic expression, contributing to patterns that pleased the eye while serving practical purposes. In a world where clothing was handmade by necessity, there was something almost magical about garments created for royalty, pieces that pushed the boundaries of what was possible with needle and thread. These were not just clothes, but wearable dreams, fantasies made manifest in silk and gold. The tower's seamstresses worked not just for money, but for the satisfaction of creating something extraordinary, something that would be remembered and admired long after their own names were forgotten. Their dedication to excellence transformed utilitarian craft into high art. You settle into a corner of the workroom, surrounded by the gentle spirits of these master craftsmen. Their presence is calming, filled with the peace that comes from work performed with love and skill, from the satisfaction of creating beauty that serves a purpose larger than personal ambition. The tower's musicians once filled its halls with melodies that lifted spirits and soothed troubled minds. Though their instruments have long since fallen silent, the echo of their music still resonates in chambers that remember the power of harmony to transform harsh realities into something beautiful. You make your way to spaces where court musicians once gathered to practice and perform, rooms that still seem to vibrate with phantom melodies. The acoustics here are remarkable, designed to carry even the softest notes to every corner of the chamber, ensuring that no one would miss the healing power of music. Medieval music was not just entertainment, but medicine for the soul, carefully crafted to promote specific emotional states and spiritual conditions. Modes and melodies were chosen for their ability to calm anxiety, inspire courage, or deepen contemplation, making musicians as much healers as artists. You can almost hear the ghostly strains of lutes and viols, the gentle rhythm of tabors and the sweet voice of recorders, all blending into harmonies that speak directly to the heart without need for words. The music seems to come from the walls themselves, as if the stones have absorbed centuries of melody and are now releasing it slowly into the peaceful night. The tower's musicians were not just performers, but composers, listeners seeking the same solace you seek tonight. The acoustics carry even your breathing in gentle echoes, making you part of the chamber's eternal chorus. Music has the power to transcend time, to carry listeners beyond the immediate concerns of daily life into realms where beauty and meaning intertwine. The tower's phantom musicians understood this power, using their skills not just to entertain but to heal, to comfort, to inspire hope in even the darkest circumstances. The melodies that once filled these chambers were like prayers set to music, expressions of the human longing for beauty and meaning that transcends the harsh realities of medieval life. Tonight, their echoes still carry that same healing power, offering comfort to any soul willing to listen with an open heart. You close your eyes and let the phantom music wash over you, feeling tensions you didn't know you carried begin to dissolve under its gentle influence. The harmonies seem to reorganize your thoughts, bringing order to chaos, peace to anxiety, hope to despair. The tower's music teaches the same lesson as its other mysteries, that beauty has the power to transform even the most difficult circumstances, that human creativity can find expression in any environment, that art and transcendence are not luxuries, but necessities for the human spirit. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London, because these phantom melodies would carry you so far beyond ordinary consciousness that sleep would seem like simply another movement in an eternal symphony, another harmony in the endless song that connects all things to their source. The tower's blacksmiths once worked in forges that glowed like earthbound stars, shaping iron and steel into tools and weapons, decorative objects and practical necessities. Their hammer blows rang across the complex like giant bells, marking time with the rhythm of creation itself. You make your way to the forge areas, now cold and silent, but still radiating the accumulated heat of centuries of creative fire. The very stones seem to remember the glow of molten metal, the shower of sparks that accompanied the transformation of raw ore into objects of beauty and utility. Blacksmithing was alchemy in its most practical form, the mysterious process by which earth and fire combined to create tools that extended human capability beyond the limitations of flesh and bone. The smiths who worked here were part scientist, part artist, part magician, transforming the most stubborn materials into expressions of human will and imagination. Use into instruments of remarkable precision and grace. Each tool was perfectly balanced, an extension of the smith's own body and will, shaped by the very work it was designed to perform. The rhythm of hammer on anvil was like a heartbeat, steady and strong, marking time with the eternal human effort to shape the world according to our needs and dreams. This rhythm still echoes in the empty forges, a ghostly percussion that speaks of countless hours of patient, productive work. Iron and steel forged in the tower's workshops served many purposes, from horseshoes and nails to swords and armor, from decorative hinges to massive locks that secured the fortress against intruders. Each piece was crafted not just for function but for beauty, reflecting the smith's understanding that utility and artistry were not opposites but partners. You run your hands along the anvils where these masterpieces were shaped, feeling the smooth depressions worn into iron by millions of hammer blows. The metal is cool now, but it seems to retain the memory of heat, the echo of the creative fire that once transformed it from raw ore into precise tool. The tower's smiths worked not just for the fortress but for the surrounding community, creating tools and implements that made daily life easier and more productive. Their craft connected them to the most basic human activities, from farming and cooking to building and defending, making them essential participants in the great work of civilization. In a world where everything was made by hand, blacksmiths held a position of special respect and authority. They were the keepers of practical magic, the ones who could transform the earth's raw materials into the tools that other craftsmen needed to practice their own arts. You settle near one of the great forges, imagining the warmth that once radiated from its fire, the comfortable heat that made winter bearable, and turned the workshop into a gathering place for anyone seeking warmth and companionship. The forge was not just a workplace but a community centre, a place where news was shared and stories told. The tower's blacksmiths understood that their work was about more than making objects. They were creating the tools that would enable other people to create, to build, to defend, to express their own skills and visions. In this way, every hammer blow was an act of service, every shaped piece of metal a gift to the future. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London because the spirit of creative fight between practical power and theoretical understanding. You climb to the chambers where these learned men once worked, rooms that still seem to shimmer with the accumulated wisdom of centuries of study and contemplation. The very air feels thicker here, charged with the energy of thousands of questions asked and answered, problems posed and solved. Medieval scholarship was a different kind of craft, requiring not hammer and anvil but patience and persistence, the ability to read ancient texts in multiple languages, to understand mathematical principles that seemed to border on magic. The scholars who worked here were explorers of invisible territories, mappers of realms that existed only in thought and calculation. You can almost see the ghostly figures of robed scholars bent over their manuscripts, copying precious texts by candlelight, adding their own marginalia and insights to the accumulated wisdom of ages. Their work was both preservation and creation, keeping ancient knowledge alive, while adding new understanding to the great conversation that spans centuries. The tools of scholarship were simple but precious: quills and ink, parchment and vellum, compasses and astrolabes, all the instruments needed to measure and record the movements of stars and planets, the relationships between numbers and geometric forms. Each tool was crafted with the same care as any sword or crown, understanding that knowledge required its own forms of precision and beauty. Books in medieval times were treasures beyond price, each one representing months or years of labour by scribes and illuminators, binders and decorators. The tower's library contained volumes that connected its scholars to the greatest minds of their age and earlier ages, making the fortress a repository of human understanding as well as royal power. You run your hands along the reading tables where these precious volumes once lay open, feeling the smoothness worn into wood by countless hours of careful study. The surface seems warm to your touch, as if it still retains the heat of all the concentration and dedication that was focused here. The tower's scholars studied not just for personal enrichment, but for practical application, seeking knowledge that could improve the lives of the fortress's residents and the kingdom beyond. Their work connected abstract learning to concrete benefits, demonstrating that wisdom and utility were natural partners rather than competing interests. Astronomy helped navigators find their way across unmarked seas. Mathematics enabled architects to design buildings that would stand for centuries. Medicine provided relief from ailments. Their dedication to understanding was a form of worship, an acknowledgement that the world contained mysteries worthy of a lifetime's investigation. The rhythm of scholarly work was different from that of craftsmen or warriors, marked not by the steady beat of hammer on anvil, but by the irregular pulse of discovery, the sudden illumination that comes when seemingly unrelated facts suddenly form a coherent pattern. Tonight, surrounded by the gentle spirits of these long-dead scholars, you feel your own mind opening to questions you hadn't thought to ask, possibilities you hadn't imagined. The tower's academic atmosphere encourages curiosity, rewards patience, celebrates the kind of deep thinking that transforms mere information into genuine wisdom. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London, because the accumulated wisdom of centuries would stimulate such profound contemplation that consciousness would expand beyond the boundaries of individual thought, merging with the eternal conversation that connects all seekers of truth across time and space. The tower's apothecaries once mixed remedies in chambers filled with herbs and minerals, essences and tinctures, all the natural substances needed to heal the sick and ease the suffering. Their work combined scientific knowledge with intuitive understanding, making them bridges between the rational and the mystical. You enter the spaces where these healers once worked, rooms that still seem to carry the faint fragrance of medicinal plants and the ghost of careful preparation. The air itself feels charged with healing energy, as if the very atmosphere has been infused with the accumulated power of countless remedies, mixed with skill and compassion. Medieval medicine was as much art as science, requiring practitioners to understand not just the physical properties of healing substances, but also the complex relationships between body and spirit, individual constitution, and universal principles. The tower's apothecaries were physicians of the whole person, treating not just symptoms but the underlying imbalances that created illness. You can almost see the ghostly figures of master healers, grinding herbs with mortar and pestle, distilling essences over carefully controlled flames, combining ingredients according to formulas passed down through generations of practice. Their work required not just knowledge but intuition, the ability to sense what each patient needed beyond what their symptoms revealed. The tools of the apothecary were like those of any craftsman, shaped by use and polished by care into instruments of remarkable precision and beauty. Scales and measures, alembics and retorts, all the apparatus pharmacy that could address almost any ailment. Lavender for anxiety, willow bark for pain, chamomile for sleeplessness, each plant contributing its own gifts to the great work of healing. You run your hands along the preparation tables where these remedies were mixed, feeling the smoothness worn into wood by countless hours of careful work. The surface seems to radiate warmth and comfort, as if it has absorbed some of the healing energy of all the medicines prepared here. The tower's apothecaries treated not just the fortress's residents, but also visitors who came seeking relief from ailments that conventional medicine could not address. Their reputation for skill and compassion drew patients from across London, making the tower a centre of healing as well as royal power. The preparation of medicines was a meditative practice, requiring the healer to focus completely on the task at hand, to bring their full attention and intention to the work of creating substances that would ease suffering and restore health. This concentration was itself a form of prayer, an offering of skill and compassion to the great work of healing. You settle into a corner of the apothecary, surrounded by the gentle spirits of these master healers. Their presence is deeply comforting, filled with the peace that comes from dedicating one's life to the relief of suffering, from using knowledge and skill in service of something larger than personal ambition. The tower's healers understood that true medicine addressed not just physical symptoms, but also the spiritual and emotional factors that contributed to illness. They treated the whole person, understanding that healing required attention to relationships, environment, and meaning, as well as to the body's immediate needs. Tonight, their healing presence seems to work on you as well, easing tensions you didn't know you carried, calming anxieties you hadn't recognized, restoring balance to energies that had been scattered by the demands of modern life. The apothecary becomes a sanctuary of healing that transcends time, offering its gifts to anyone willing to receive them. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London because the accumulated healing energy of centuries would restore such profound balance to your entire being that sleep would come like the most natural medicine, gentle and effective and deeply restorative. The tower's astronomers once studied the movements of stars and planets from chambers equipped with the... Astronomy was both science and art, requiring precise mathematical calculation combined with intuitive understanding of the universe's underlying patterns. The tower's astronomers were cartographers of infinity, mapping territories that could never be visited, but whose influence touched every aspect of earthly life. You can almost see the ghostly figures of these celestial scholars, bent over their astrolabes and armillary spheres, calculating the positions of planets whose movements determined everything, from the best times to plant crops, to the most auspicious dates for royal ceremonies. Their work made the tower a bridge between earth and heaven. The instruments of astronomy were marvels of medieval craftsmanship, intricate devices of brass and steel that could measure the movements of celestial bodies with remarkable precision. Each instrument was a work of art as well as a scientific tool, demonstrating the medieval understanding that beauty and utility were natural partners. Star charts covered the walls of these chambers, hand-drawn maps of the night sky that showed not just the positions of stars and constellations, but also their relationships to earthly events and human destinies. These charts were simultaneously scientific documents and works of spiritual art, connecting the visible and invisible worlds. You settle near a window that once framed the astronomer's view of the night sky, looking up at the same stars that guided their calculations centuries ago. The moon has moved across the sky since you began your journey through the tower, but its light still bathes the ancient stones in silver radiance. The rhythm of astronomical work followed the movements of the celestial bodies themselves, requiring scholars to work when the sky was clear, regardless of personal comfort or convenience. This dedication connected them to cosmic time, to rhythms larger and more reliable than any human schedule. The tower's astronomers understood that their work served purposes both practical and spiritual, providing navigation aids for travelers, while also revealing the underlying order that governed all existence. Their calculations helped sailors cross unmarked oceans and farmers plan their planting, but they also offered glimpses of the divine intelligence that moved all things according to perfect law. Tonight, gazing up at the same stars that inspired these ancient scholars, you feel connected to their wonder and dedication. The night sky becomes a vast book written in light, telling stories that span millennia. Tower of London, because contemplating the infinite cosmos would expand your consciousness so far beyond ordinary boundaries that sleep would seem like simply another orbit in the great celestial dance, another turn in the eternal spiral that connects all things to their source. The tower's brewers once worked in chambers filled with the sweet aroma of fermenting grain, creating ales and meads that brought comfort and community to fortress life. Their work was both craft and science, transforming simple ingredients through time and patience into drinks that nourished body and spirit alike. You make your way to the brewing chambers, now empty, but still carrying the phantom scent of malt and hops, yeast and honey, all the natural substances that medieval brewers used to create their liquid alchemy. The very air seems thick with the memory of fermentation, that mysterious process by which grain becomes something greater than itself. Medieval brewing was essential work, creating drinks that were often safer than water and always more sustaining than simple liquid. The tower's brewers served not just the fortress but the surrounding community, understanding that their craft contributed to public health as well as private pleasure. You can almost see the ghostly figures of master brewers testing their creations with the careful attention of artists evaluating their work. Their knowledge was passed down through generations of practice, each brewer adding their own refinements to recipes that connected them to the most ancient human traditions. The brewing process followed its own rhythm, a patient cycle of preparation and waiting, tending and testing, that taught its practitioners the value of patience and the rewards of careful attention to detail. This rhythm still resonates in the empty chambers, a gentle pulse that speaks of time honoured and work well done. Large wooden vats once stood in these chambers, vessels crafted by master coopers who understood that the container was as important as the contents. These barrels were works of art in themselves, their curved staves fitted together with such precision that they could hold liquid for years without losing a drop. You run your hands along the stone platforms where these vats once rested, feeling the slight depressions worn into rock by the weight of countless barrels. The stone seems warm to your touch, as if it still retains the heat of fermentation, the gentle warmth that transforms grain into sustenance. The tower's brewers worked not just for profit, but for the satisfaction of creating something that brought people together, that eased. Brewing chambers become a place of community, even in their emptiness, filled with the accumulated goodwill of all who laboured here to serve others. You settle into a corner where brewers once rested between their tasks, feeling the peace that comes from honest work, honestly done. The atmosphere is deeply comforting, filled with the satisfaction that comes from creating something that brings joy and sustenance to others. The rhythm of brewing work was meditative, repetitive tasks that quieted the mind while the hands performed their ancient craft. This meditation still fills the empty chambers, offering the same peace to modern visitors that it once provided to medieval craftsmen. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London, because the gentle spirit of fellowship and community that once filled these brewing chambers would warm your heart with such contentment that sleep would come like the natural end of a perfect day spent in good company. The tower's weavers once worked in chambers filled with the soft sound of shuttles and looms, creating textiles that clothed the fortress residents and served as trade goods throughout medieval Europe. Their work connected the tower to markets and communities across the known world, making it a centre of commerce as well as power. You enter the weaving chambers, rooms that still seem to vibrate with the gentle rhythm of looms that once worked day and night to transform raw wool and flax into cloth of remarkable beauty and utility. The very air seems to shimmer with phantom threads, invisible warp and weft that still weave patterns in the imagination. Medieval weaving was both practical necessity and high art, requiring not just technical skill, but also aesthetic vision, the ability to see how colours and patterns would work together to create textiles that pleased the eye while serving essential functions. You can almost see the ghostly figures of master weavers, their hands moving with the fluid grace that comes from years of practice, guiding threads through patterns that seemed impossibly complex to untrained eyes. Their work required not just skill, but patience, the ability to maintain focus through hours of repetitive motion. The looms themselves were marvels of medieval engineering, wooden frameworks that could tension hundreds of threads while allowing weavers to manipulate them with precision and speed. Labour. The surface seems to pulse gently under your touch, as if it still responds to the rhythm of shuttles that once flew back and forth across its length. The tower's weavers created not just utilitarian cloth, but also decorative tapestries that told stories and captured scenes from daily life and legendary tales. These textile narratives brought colour and beauty to stone walls, while preserving cultural memory in threads that could last for centuries. The rhythm of weaving was like a heartbeat, steady and strong, marking time with the eternal human effort to transform raw materials into objects of beauty and utility. This rhythm still echoes in the empty chambers, a ghostly percussion that speaks of patience and persistence, of beauty created one thread at a time. You settle near a window where weavers once worked by natural light, understanding that the quality of their work depended on their ability to see true colours and detect the smallest flaws in their patterns. The light streaming through this same window guided their hands, as it now illuminates your contemplation. The tower's textiles served many purposes, from clothing and bedding to sails for ships and banners for ceremonies. Each piece of cloth that left these chambers carried with it a portion of the weaver's skill and dedication, spreading the tower's influence far beyond its walls. Tonight, surrounded by the gentle spirits of these master craftsmen, you feel wrapped in the same warmth and comfort that their textiles once provided. The weaving chambers become a place of security and protection, filled with the accumulated care of all who laboured here to clothe and shelter others. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London, because the gentle rhythm of phantom looms would lull you into such deep relaxation that sleep would come like the natural conclusion of a perfect pattern, complete and satisfying, and beautifully finished. The tower's scribes once worked in chambers illuminated by candlelight and morning sun, copying precious manuscripts and creating new documents that preserved knowledge and recorded the great events of their age. Their work connected the tower to the intellectual life of medieval Europe, making it a repository of learning as well as royal power. You enter the scriptorium, rooms that still seem charged with the energy of intense concentration and careful attention to detail. The very air appears to shimmer with phantom letters. Invisible work required. Their quills moved with the fluid grace of dancers, creating letters that were individually works of art while serving the greater purpose of preserving human knowledge. The tools of the scribe were simple but perfectly crafted, quills cut from the finest feathers, inks mixed from recipes passed down through generations, parchment prepared with skill that transformed animal skin into surfaces worthy of the most beautiful writing. Each tool was maintained with religious devotion. Illuminated manuscripts created in these chambers combined text with images that brought stories to life in brilliant colours and intricate detail. These illustrations were not mere decoration but integral parts of the narrative, helping readers understand and remember the wisdom contained in the written words. You run your hands along the writing desks where these masterpieces were created, feeling the slight depressions worn into wood by countless hours of careful work. The surface seems to respond to your touch with a gentle warmth, as if it still retains the heat of all the concentration and dedication focused here. The tower's scribes worked on projects that ranged from recording royal decrees to copying religious texts, from creating maps of distant lands to preserving scientific treatises that advanced human understanding. Each document that emerged from these chambers was a bridge between minds separated by time and distance. The rhythm of scribal work was meditative, the careful formation of each letter requiring complete attention to the present moment, while serving the larger purpose of preserving knowledge for future generations. This meditation still fills the empty chambers, offering peace to any visitor willing to embrace its gentle discipline. You settle into a chair where scribes once sat through long hours of patient work, feeling the comfort that comes from furniture shaped by generations of use. The chair seems to welcome you into the community of careful workers who understood that their labour served purposes larger than personal ambition. Manuscripts created in the tower's scriptorium travelled throughout medieval Europe, carrying knowledge and stories that enriched the intellectual life of an entire continent. The scribes who created these treasures understood that their work was not just copying, but participating in the great conversation that connects all human minds across time and space. Tonight, surrounded by the gentle spirits of these master craftsmen, you feel your own mind opening to the same dedication to precision and beauty that guided their work. The scriptorium becomes a sanctuary of learning that transcends time, offering its gift, eternal conversation that preserves and transmits human understanding. The tower's carpenters once worked in chambers filled with the clean scent of freshly cut wood and the gentle sound of tools shaping timber into objects of utility and beauty. Their craft provided the foundation for all other work in the fortress, creating the structures and furnishings that made civilized life possible. You enter the carpenters' workshops, rooms that still resonate with the rhythm of saws and planes, chisels and mallets, all the tools that transform raw timber into objects that serve human needs while pleasing the eye. The very air seems thick with the ghost of wood shavings and the phantom sound of careful measurement. Medieval carpentry was both practical necessity and high art, requiring not just technical skill, but also understanding of wood's natural properties, the ability to work with grain and growth patterns rather than against them. The tower's carpenters were partners with the trees that provided their materials. You can almost see the ghostly figures of master craftsmen, selecting boards with the careful attention of artists choosing colours for a painting. Their knowledge of wood was intimate and complete, understanding how different species would behave under various conditions, how to bring out the natural beauty hidden in rough timber. The tools of carpentry were extensions of the craftsman's own body and will, shaped by use into instruments of remarkable precision and grace. Each saw and plane was maintained with the same care that a musician gives to their instrument, understanding that the quality of the tool directly affected the quality of the work. Wooden structures created by the tower's carpenters served countless purposes, from the great roof timbers that sheltered entire halls to the delicate boxes that protected precious manuscripts. Each project required its own approach, its own understanding of how form must follow function, while never forgetting the importance of beauty. You run your hands along the workbenches where these masterpieces were shaped, feeling the smoothness worn into wood by generations of careful work. The surface seems alive under your touch, warm and responsive, as if it still remembers the vibration of tools and the pressure of skilled hands. The tower's carpenters worked not just with local timber, but with exotic woods brought from distant lands, each species offering its own gifts of colour and grain, hardness and flexibility. Their workshops became laboratories where the property once worked by natural light, understanding that their craft required not just manual skill, but also visual acuity, the ability to see grain patterns and detect the smallest flaws in their materials. The same light that guided their hands now illuminates your contemplation. Furniture and structures created by the tower's carpenters lasted for centuries, their joints growing stronger with age, their beauty deepening as the wood matured and took on the patina of long use. These craftsmen built not just for their own time, but for generations yet unborn. Tonight, surrounded by the gentle spirits of these master builders, you feel the same sense of solid foundation and reliable structure that their work once provided. The carpenter shops become places of security and permanence, filled with the accumulated skill of all who laboured here to create things of lasting value. The tower's carpenters understood that their craft was about more than making objects. They were creating the physical foundation for community life, the structures and furnishings that allowed other crafts to flourish and civilized life to take root. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London, because the solid craftsmanship and patient skill that built these chambers would provide such a sense of security and permanence that sleep would come like the natural rest that follows a day of honest work well done. The tower's painters once worked in chambers filled with the rich aroma of pigments and oils, creating works of art that transformed stone walls into windows onto other worlds. Their brushes brought colour and life to the fortress, making beauty an integral part of daily existence. You enter the painting chambers, rooms that still seem to shimmer with phantom colours, invisible masterpieces that continue to glow in the artistic imagination. The very air appears charged with creative energy, thick with the accumulated inspiration of centuries of patient work. Medieval painting was both craft and calling, requiring not just technical skill, but also spiritual vision, the ability to see beyond the surface of things to the deeper truths that art could reveal. The Towers painters were translators of the invisible, making visible the beauty that existed in realms beyond ordinary perception. You can almost see the ghostly figures of master artists, mixing their pigments with the careful attention of alchemists preparing precious elixirs. Their knowledge of colour was both some religious paintings created by the Towers artists served as windows into the divine, helping viewers contemplate mysteries that transcended earthly understanding. These works were not mere decoration, but aids to meditation, visual prayers that lifted the mind toward eternal truths. You run your hands along the easels where these masterpieces took shape, feeling the slight roughness left by centuries of use. The wood seems to vibrate gently under your touch, as if it still responds to the creative energy that once flowed through these chambers like an invisible river. Secular paintings depicted scenes from daily life and legendary tales, preserving visual records of customs and costumes, architecture and landscapes that might otherwise have been lost to time. These works were windows into the past, allowing future generations to see their ancestors as living, breathing human beings. The rhythm of painting work followed the natural pace of careful observation and patient application, teaching its practitioners to see the world with new eyes, to notice subtleties of light and shadow, colour and form that escaped ordinary attention. This heightened perception still fills the empty studios, offering enhanced vision to any visitor willing to look with an artist's eyes. You settle near a window where painters once worked by northern light, the steady illumination that revealed true colours without the harsh shadows that southern exposure might create. The same light that guided their brushes now bathes your contemplation in gentle radiance. Murals created by the Towers painters covered entire walls with scenes that told stories and conveyed messages about power and faith, love and loss. All the themes that have occupied human imagination since the first cave painter picked up a piece of charcoal and began to draw. Tonight, surrounded by the gentle spirits of these master artists, you feel your own vision expanding, your perception becoming more acute, your appreciation for beauty deepening beyond anything you thought possible. The painting chambers become galleries of invisible masterpieces, filled with works that exist now only in imagination, but retain all their power to inspire and transform. The Towers painters understood that their work was about more than creating objects. They were enriching the visual environment, making beauty accessible to everyone who lived or worked within the fortress walls, democratizing art by making it part of daily experience. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London, because the accumulated artistic vision of centuries would open your eyes to such beauty in the ordinary crafts depended. Their work was the most permanent of all the Towers' arts, creating structures that would endure long after wood rotted and fabric decayed, metal rusted, and paint faded. You make your way to areas where masons once shaped stone with hammer and chisel, places that still resonate with the patient rhythm of careful carving. The walls themselves are testimonies to their skill, each block fitted so precisely that mortar seems almost unnecessary, each surface finished to a smoothness that invites touch. Medieval masonry was both engineering and sculpture, requiring not just technical knowledge but also artistic vision, the ability to see how individual stones would work together to create structures that were both functional and beautiful. The Towers masons were architects of eternity. You can almost see the ghostly figures of master stoneworkers, testing each block for flaws, adjusting the fit until joints were perfect, taking whatever time was necessary to ensure that their work would last for centuries. Their patience was legendary, their standards absolute. The tools of masonry were simple but effective, shaped by generations of use into instruments that extended human capability while respecting the natural properties of stone. Each hammer and chisel was balanced perfectly for its specific purpose, making the hard work of stone carving as efficient as possible. You run your hands along walls that these craftsmen built, feeling the perfect smoothness of surfaces that have weathered nearly 1,000 years without losing their precision. The stone seems warm under your touch, as if it retains some portion of the life force that shaped it. The tower's masons worked with many types of stone, each offering its own challenges and opportunities. Local limestone provided the bulk of construction material, while exotic marbles and granites were imported for special purposes, adding colour and texture to structures that might otherwise appear monotonous. Carved decorations created by the tower's masons transformed functional architecture into works of art, adding beauty to strength, elegance to utility. These decorative elements were not afterthoughts, but integral parts of the design, proving that even the most practical structures could serve aesthetic purposes. The rhythm of masonry work was measured and deliberate, each strike of hammer on chisel carefully calculated to achieve maximum effect with minimum effort. This rhythm against them. Their work represents the ultimate triumph of human skill over natural forces, proof that careful craftsmanship can create things that approach immortality. Tonight, surrounded by the enduring evidence of these master builders, you feel connected to their vision of permanence, their dedication to creating things that would outlast their own brief lives. The mason work becomes a meditation on legacy, on the human desire to leave something beautiful and useful for future generations. The tower's masons understood that their craft was about more than building walls. They were creating the physical foundation for civilization itself, the structures that would shelter and protect countless generations of human hopes and dreams. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London because the solid permanence of its stone walls would provide such a sense of security and continuity that sleep would come like the natural rest that follows the completion of great work, peaceful and satisfying and deeply restorative. The tower's glaziers once worked with fire and sand, creating windows that brought light and beauty to spaces that might otherwise have remained dark and cramped. Their craft was both science and magic, transforming the most common materials into surfaces that captured and transformed the very essence of illumination. You enter chambers where glaziers once worked, rooms that still seem filled with phantom light, invisible rainbows that dance in the imagination like memories of all the windows that were shaped here. The very air appears to shimmer with glass dust that catches and reflects light that exists only in dreams. Medieval glassmaking was one of the most mysterious crafts, requiring knowledge of fire and chemistry that bordered on alchemy. The tower's glaziers were masters of transformation, able to take sand and ash and heat and create materials that seem to capture light itself. You can almost see the ghostly figures of master craftsmen, working at furnaces that glowed like earthbound stars, their faces lit by flames hot enough to melt the most stubborn materials. Their work required not just skill but courage, the willingness to work with forces that could easily destroy as well as create. The tools of glassmaking were specially designed for working with materials at extreme temperatures. Long rods and paddles that allowed craftsmen to shape molten glass while staying safely away from the killing heat. Each tool was crafted with the same precision as the glass it would help create. Stained glass windows created by the coloured light. The stone seems to glow faintly under your touch, as if it remembers the radiance it once held. Clear glass created by the tower's craftsmen was equally miraculous, providing views of the outside world while keeping out wind and rain. These transparent barriers were like crystallized air, invisible boundaries that defined space while never completely separating interior from exterior. The rhythm of glassmaking followed the natural pace of heating and cooling, shaping and annealing, teaching its practitioners patience and respect for processes that could not be rushed or forced. This rhythm still fills the empty workshops, offering the same lessons in patience to modern visitors. You settle near a window opening where glaziers once installed their creations, feeling the way light streams through the space with mathematical precision. The same physics that guided their work now illuminates your contemplation, connecting you to the eternal dance of light and matter. Glass created by the tower's craftsmen served purposes both practical and aesthetic, from simple drinking vessels to elaborate vessels for religious ceremonies. Each piece demonstrated the glazier's understanding that utility and beauty were natural partners, rather than competing concerns. Tonight, surrounded by the gentle spirits of these masters of light, you feel your own perception becoming clearer, your vision more acute, your appreciation for the play of light and shadow deepening beyond anything you thought possible. The glass-making chambers become laboratories of illumination. The tower's glaziers understood that their craft was about more than making objects. They were creating new ways of seeing, new relationships between interior and exterior, new possibilities for bringing light and beauty into daily life. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London, because the accumulated mastery of light and transparency would clarify your vision so completely that consciousness would become like perfectly clear glass, invisible to itself but capable of transmitting infinite beauty and wisdom. The tower's clockmakers once worked in chambers filled with the gentle sound of gears and springs, creating timepieces that brought order and precision to fortress life. Their mechanisms were marvels of medieval engineering, proof that human ingenuity could capture and control even the most abstract forces. You enter the workshops where clockmakers once laboured, rooms that still seem to tick with phantom rhythms, invisible mechanisms that continue to mark time in dimensions beyond ordinary perception. Understand and control the invisible force that governed all existence. You can almost see the ghostly figures of master craftsmen, adjusting gears with the delicate touch of surgeons, testing springs with the sensitivity of musicians tuning instruments. Their work required not just technical skill, but also intuitive understanding of how mechanical forces could be balanced and controlled. The tools of clockmaking were precision instruments themselves, files and lathes capable of working to tolerances that seemed impossible for hand-operated equipment. Each tool was maintained with obsessive care, understanding that the accuracy of the final product depended on the precision of every component part. Tower clocks created by these craftsmen mark the hours for entire communities, their chimes carrying across London to announce the progress of each day. These public timepieces were gifts to the community, democratizing time by making it available to everyone within hearing range. You run your hands along the workbenches where these mechanical marvels were assembled, feeling the smooth indentations worn by countless hours of careful work. The wood seems to vibrate slightly under your touch, as if it still responds to the delicate adjustments that once transformed piles of metal into living mechanisms. Smaller timepieces, created for personal use, demonstrated the clockmaker's ability to miniaturize their art without sacrificing accuracy, creating portable miracles that allowed individuals to carry precise time wherever they went. These pocket watches were like mechanical hearts, beating with perfect regularity. The rhythm of clockmaking work was itself precisely measured, each operation timed to achieve maximum efficiency while maintaining the accuracy that the craft demanded. This rhythm still echoes in the empty workshops, a ghostly percussion that speaks of patience and precision, united in perfect harmony. You settle into a chair where clockmakers once worked through long hours of patient assembly, feeling the support that furniture shaped by generations of use provides. The chair seems to welcome you into the community of precise workers who understood that their craft served purposes larger than personal ambition. Clocks created by the tower's craftsmen imposed human order on natural time, dividing the seamless flow of existence into measurable units that could be planned and controlled. Their work was both practical necessity and philosophical statement about humanity's relationship with temporal reality. Tonight, surrounded by the gentle spirits of these masters of time, you feel your own sense of temporal flow becoming more acute, your awareness of present moments deepening, while your anxiety coordinate their activities, work together more effectively, and find rhythm and order in lives that might otherwise seem chaotic and unpredictable. You wouldn't last a night in the Tower of London, because the precise mechanisms created by centuries of master clockmakers would synchronize your biological rhythms so perfectly with cosmic time that sleep would come exactly when it was needed, natural and inevitable as the turning of the earth itself.